My daughter ditched her mom's funeral for her husband's lavish birthday bash, only to uncover a chilling secret. The man she loves manipulated her and plotted to steal our family's legacy. If this story breaks your heart, hit like, share it with friends, and subscribe to join me on this tear-jerking journey. I'm Edward Harlan, a 72-year-old retired engineer from Callaway, Nebraska, and I used to think I had the perfect family. Well, darn it, I was wrong. Back when life was simpler, my wife Lillian and I would sit on our porch, the Nebraska sunset, glowing like a campfire, while she read fairy tales to our daughter Amelia. At 5, Amelia would curl up in Lillian's lap, her blonde curls, bouncing eyes, glued to stories of knights who never betrayed their kin. "Dad, I'll always stick by you and Mom," she'd chirp, hugging me so tight I could feel her heartbeat. I kept thinking that's how it'd stay, us three, unbreakable.
But then everything flipped upside down faster than a Midwest storm.
Now our house is quiet, like it's holding its breath. Lillian, my partner for 47 years, is slipping away, her body ravaged by pancreatic cancer. I try to keep her spirits up, cooking her favorite pumpkin soup, but she barely takes a sip before giving me that tired smile. "You're doing fine, Ed," she whispers. Her brown eyes still warm even through the pain. It tears me up to see her so frail, her hands thin as paper in mine. Every night, I sit by her bed watching her sleep, counting the days we have left. "Where's Amelia?" she asked last night, voice faint as a breeze. I couldn't tell her, our daughter now caught up in Omaha with her husband, Victor. Langston hasn't called in weeks. Amelia was our everything. Smart, played piano like she was born for it, always had us laughing with her stories. We gave her all we had, love, time, money for lessons, because we wanted her to shine. She'd run to me after work, yelling, "Dad, you're home," with a grin that lit up the room. But ever since she married Victor, a slick financial guy with a Rolex and a smug grin, she's not the same. Her calls are short, her voice cold, like she's reading off a cue card. Yesterday I called, hoping she'd come see her mom. "Dad, I'm swamped," she said. And then what? I didn't see coming, was her next line. "Victor says it's not a good look for us to drop everything." I froze, hearing Victor's voice in the background, barking about some meeting. Not a good look for who? Since when did family become a business deal? This afternoon, I wandered out to Lillian's tulip garden, her pride rose of red and yellow blooms she loved like her own kids. While watering, I found something odd under a flat stone, a worn leather journal, Lillian's handwriting on the cover. My heart skipped. I opened it, and her words hit me hard. "Amelia's drifting away. I'm scared Victor's changing her, but I believe her heart's still there." Another line caught my eye. "I worry he's hiding something from her. Lillian even now holds on to hope for our girl." I couldn't read more. It stung too much. What's Victor hiding? What else is in that journal? And why did Lillian tuck it away like a secret? I went back inside and Lillian was awake, her eyes searching mine. "Call Amelia again, Ed," she said, barely a whisper. I nodded, but my gut twisted. I knew another call would just end in excuses, and it broke me to think Amelia might not make it in time. Standing there, holding a framed photo of us three laughing on a lake trip years ago, I wondered what's pulling our daughter away. Victor's got his claws in her, I can feel it, but there's something bigger going on. Well, darn it, I'm not giving up on Amelia, not while Lillian still believes in her. That journal's calling my name, and I've got a hunch it holds the key to bringing our girl back. Well, darn it, I thought maybe today would be different. This morning I dialed Amelia's number again, hoping she'd say she was packing her bags to come see her mom. The phone rang forever, And when she finally picked up, her voice was as cold as a Nebraska winter. "Dad, I'm in the middle of something," she said, clipped and rushed, like I was interrupting her day. In the background, I heard Victor's sharp tone. "Wrap it up, Amelia. We've got a schedule." My stomach twisted. "Your mom's not doing good, kiddo," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can you make it this weekend?" There was a long pause. Then she mumbled, "I'll try, but Victor's got this big client thing." What I didn't see coming was her next line. He says, "You don't want me there anyway, Dad. Says you're mad at me." I froze, gripping the phone. Mad at her, I'd give anything to have her here with Lillian. What the heck was Victor feeding her? I hung up, my hands shaking, and sank into the kitchen chair where Lillian used to sip her coffee, reading her books. That call took me back to the first time I met Victor 2 years ago, when Amelia brought him to our house for dinner. He strutted in tall and lean, his fancy suit screaming money, his Rolex glinting under our dining room light. "Nice place," he said, but his smirk said he was pricing it like some real estate deal. Must be tough to sell in a small town like this. Lillian, always the gracious one, tried to steer the talk to her work at the school library. "Books change kids' lives," she said, her eyes lighting up. Victor just laughed a cold, condescending chuckle. "That's sweet, Mrs. Harlan, but let's be real. Reading doesn't pay the bills." Amelia, sitting next to him, forced a smile, but I saw her flinch. I kept thinking she'd call him out like the fiery girl who used to argue with me over math homework, but she didn't. She just sat there nodding like she was trying to please him. That night, Lillian cried in the kitchen, wiping plates so hard I thought they'd break. "He's turning her into someone else, Ed," she said. And I couldn't argue. After that call with Amelia, I needed air, so I headed to Lillian's tulip garden. Those flowers were her heart and soul, and tending them felt like keeping her close. I pulled out that leather journal I'd found yesterday, my fingers tracing her neat handwriting. I read a little more, and her words cut deep, Amelia's slipping away. Victor's filling her head with his world money status. But I know my girl's heart is still there, buried somewhere. Then a line that stopped me cold. I heard Victor on the phone talking about securing the future. "I'm scared he's using her, Ed." My blood ran cold. Securing the future. What was that supposed to mean? Was Victor planning something behind Amelia's back? I closed the journal, my mind racing. Lillian saw through him even when I didn't. But now I was starting to. I went back inside, and Lillian was awake, propped up on pillows, her face pale, but her eyes searching mine. "Did you talk to Amelia?" she asked, voice so soft it barely reached me. I nodded, but my throat tightened. "She's caught up with work," I said, hating the lie. Lillian sighed a small, sad sound. "She's still our girl, Ed. She'll come back." I wanted to believe her, but I was losing hope. Amelia's voice on that call, it wasn't just busy. It was empty, like she was reading lines Victor wrote for her. I kept thinking about the girl who'd beg Lillian to read one more story, who'd hug me and promise to never leave us. Where'd she go? And what was Victor hiding with that lie about me not wanting her here? Sitting there, staring at our old family photo on the mantel, Amelia grinning between us at a lake picnic. I felt my hope slipping. But then, everything flipped upside down in my head. Lillian's journal was screaming at me to dig deeper, to figure out what Victor was up to. Well, darn it, I wasn't ready to let him steal my daughter. Not while Lillian was still fighting, and not while I still had a chance to bring Amelia home. I had to know what he was hiding, and that journal was my first clue. Well, darn it, I never thought I'd be the guy standing alone at his wife's funeral. But here I am, Edward Harlan, 72 years old, feeling like the ground's been yanked out from under me. It was a gray April morning, when Lillian slipped away. I was holding her hand, her fingers so thin they felt like they'd break, when she took her last breath. The cancer had won, and my partner of 47 years, the woman who made every day brighter with her laugh and her love for books, was gone. I kept thinking she'd open her eyes, give me one more of those warm smiles, but she didn't. The room was quiet, just the tick of the kitchen clock and my own ragged breathing. I sat there for hours staring at her, trying to make sense of a world without her. What I didn't see coming was how much worse it could get. I knew I had to call Amelia. Our daughter, living it up in Omaha with her husband, Victor Langston, needed to know her mom was gone. I dialed her number, my hands shaking, hoping she'd drop everything to come home. When she picked up, her voice was sleepy, like I'd woken her on a lazy Saturday. "Dad." "What's up?" she mumbled. I swallowed hard, the words sticking in my throat. "Amelia, your mom, she passed this morning around 7. There was a long pause, so long I thought the line went dead. Then she said, "Oh, that's sudden. We'd been fighting this cancer for 8 months, and she knew it." I could hear Victor in the background grumbling about coffee, and my heart sank. "The funeral's Monday, St. Paul's Church, 11 o'clock. I said, my voice flat. "Can you make it?" Another pause, and then, what I didn't see coming, was her answer. "Dad, it's Victor's birthday that day. We've got a big party planned, clients coming, a whole thing at this fancy restaurant. Can we, maybe, move the funeral to Tuesday?" I stared at the wall at a photo of us 3 on a lake trip, Amelia grinning between me and Lillian. Move her mother's funeral. For a birthday party. "Amelia," I said slow, like I was testing the words. "You want to skip your mom's funeral for Victor's birthday?" She backpedaled fast. "Not skip, Dad, just, it's already booked and Victor's clients are important." Mom wouldn't know, right? Her voice had that edge like she was defending a bad choice. I couldn't speak. Lillian, who read to kids who loved Amelia more than life, was gone, and our daughter was picking cake and champagne over saying goodbye. "Monday," I said finally. "It's Monday. Come or don't." I hung up before she could answer, my hands shaking so bad I dropped the phone. But then everything flipped upside down in my head. Amelia wasn't just busy, she was choosing Victor over her own mother. And I knew right then I was going to change everything. That will of ours, the one leaving our house and savings to her. It wasn't hers anymore. Monday came gray and rainy, like the sky was mourning Lillian for me. I stood by her coffin at St. Paul's alone, except for the neighbors and Pastor Thomas, who'd known Lillian since we got married in that same church. Mrs. Whitaker, our neighbor, squeezed my hand, her eyes red. "Lillian was a saint," Ed, she said, bringing casseroles and stories of how Lillian helped her grandson learn to read. Pastor Thomas gave a beautiful service talking about Lillian's kindness, how she'd read to kids in the hospital, how she made our little town better. Folks came her book club, old colleagues, people she'd helped, but not Amelia. I kept glancing at the church door, hoping she'd show that she'd changed her mind and ditched Victor's party. But the door stayed shut. Our only daughter, the girl we raised to love family, wasn't there to say goodbye to her mom. After the service, we drove to the cemetery, rain pelting our umbrellas. I tossed a handful of dirt onto Lillian's coffin next to her parents' graves and thought about lying beside her one day. Would Amelia show up for me, or would she have another party to attend? Back home, the wake was full of folks sharing stories about Lillian, how she organized book drives, how she never turned anyone away. Mrs. Whitaker asked, "Where's Amelia?" And I just said she had plans. She didn't push, but I could see the pity in her eyes. Sitting in Lillian's chair that night, her journal still hidden in the garden, I felt a fire in my chest. Amelia's choice wasn't just a mistake. It was a betrayal. And I wasn't going to let it slide. Well, darn it, I decided right then to call our lawyer Walter and rewrite that will. What would come of it, I didn't know yet. But I was done letting Victor and Amelia walk all over Lillian's memory. Well, darn it, after Lillian's funeral, I felt like I was carrying a ton of bricks on my chest. I'm Edward Harlan, 72, still reeling from losing my wife of 47 years, and the sting of my daughter Amelia, choosing her husband Victor's fancy birthday bash over saying goodbye to her mom. That rainy Monday at St. Paul's Church left me hollow, standing alone by Lillian's coffin, while neighbors whispered kind words. Amelia's absence was a knife in my gut, and her words, "Can we move the funeral to Tuesday?" kept echoing each one, twisting the blade deeper. I kept thinking I'd raised her better, that she'd never turn her back on family. But then, everything flipped upside down when I realized she wasn't the girl I knew anymore. That night, sitting in Lillian's old reading chair, I made up my mind our will, the one leaving our house and savings to Amelia, had to change. She didn't deserve it, not after picking Victor's clients over her own mother. The next morning I called Walter, our lawyer in town, a guy who's been handling our affairs since his dad helped us buy this house. I drove to his office on Main Street, my hands gripping the wheel, still shaky from the funeral. Walter, a balding man in his 40s, with thick glasses, looked up from his desk, his face soft with sympathy. "Ed, I'm so sorry about Lillian. She was one of a kind." I nodded, swallowing hard, and got straight to it. "I need to rewrite the will, Walter. Amelia's out. I want everything house savings, all of it split between Lillian's kids' reading fund and the cancer foundation she supported." His eyebrows shot up, and he leaned back, adjusting his glasses. "That's a big move, Ed. Amelia could contest it in court, you know." I stared at him, my voice steady. "Let her try. She made her choice." What I didn't see coming was how calm I felt saying it, like a weight was lifting, even though my heart was still breaking. Walter scribbled notes, asking about details, how to split the assets, what to do with Lillian's jewelry, the family photos. "You sure about this, Ed?" "Maybe wait a bit. Let the grief settle," he said, his tone careful. I shook my head. "I'm not grieving my decision, Walter. I'm grieving my daughter." I told him to keep the new will under wraps, not to send it to Amelia. I wasn't ready for her to know, not yet. Why keep it secret? I guess part of me wanted to see if she'd come around on her own, without money dangling in front of her. Would she care enough to show up for me, for Lillian's memory? That question hung over me like a storm cloud, and I didn't have an answer. Back home, I was barely through the door when Mrs. Whitaker, our neighbor, showed up with a steaming casserole and a story. "Ed, you holding up okay?" she asked, setting the dish on the counter. Before I could answer, she launched into a memory about Lillian. "You know, my grandson Tommy was struggling to read, falling behind in school. Lillian spent hours with him at the library picking out books, teaching him to love stories. He's in college now, thanks to her." Her eyes glistened, and mine did too. Lillian's kindness was still alive in this town, in kids like Tommy, in the tulip garden she loved. That story lit a spark in me, a reminder of why I was giving her legacy to those charities. It wasn't just about cutting Amelia out. It was about honoring the woman who gave everything to others. I headed out to that garden, Lillian's tulips swaying in the breeze, and started weeding my hands in the dirt where she used to work. It felt like keeping her close, like she was still here guiding me. I thought about her journal still hidden under that stone. I hadn't read more, couldn't yet, but its weight was on my mind, like it held answers I wasn't ready for. Pulling weeds, I felt a fire in me, a stubborn need to protect what Lillian stood for. Amelia and Victor might not get it, but I wasn't going to let her memory fade. Well, darn it, this new will was my line in the sand. What would Amelia do when she found out? Would she fight me? Or would she finally see what she'd done? I didn't know, but for the first time since Lillian died, I felt like I was taking control. Well, darn it, I thought the hardest part was over after rewriting the will, but I was dead wrong. I'm Edward Harlan, 72, still picking up the pieces after losing my wife Lillian and changing our will to cut out our daughter Amelia for choosing her husband Victor's glitzy birthday party over her mom's funeral. Just days after I met with Walter, our lawyer, to redirect our house and savings to Lillian's kids' reading fund and the Cancer Foundation, I was out in her tulip garden, pulling weeds, trying to keep her memory alive. That's when the storm hit. I kept thinking Amelia might call, maybe apologize for ditching the funeral, but what I didn't see coming was her showing up at my doorstep madder than a hornet, with a letter from Walter clutched in her hand. It was late afternoon, the kind of gray Nebraska day that makes everything feel heavy. I heard a car screech into the driveway, and there was Amelia storming up the porch, her face red and her eyes blazing. "Dad, what the hell is this?" she yelled, waving the letter like a weapon. "You cut me out of the will." For what I stood there frozen as she barged into the living room, tossing her purse on the couch like she still lived here. Her voice was sharp, accusing, like I'd betrayed her. "You're punishing me because I couldn't make it to Mom's funeral. That's harsh. Dad, even for you." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool, but her words lit a fire in me. "Harsh," I said, my voice low. "You picked Victor's birthday bash over saying goodbye to your mom Amelia. You tell me what's harsh." Her eyes flickered, but she doubled down, crossing her arms. "It was one day, Dad. One day Mom wouldn't care, but you're acting like I'm some monster." I sat in Lillian's old reading chair, the one she loved, and looked at her. This grown woman who used to be my little girl, the one who'd beg for one more bedtime story. "Amelia," I said slow, "your mom spent her last months asking for you. I stood by her coffin alone while you and Victor were toasting with his big-shot clients. That's not just one day. That's who you've become." Her face crumpled for a second like my words hit home, but then her phone buzzed. It was Victor, his voice barking through the speaker before she could mute it. "Amelia, don't let him guilt-trip you. We'll sue if we have to. Get that will fixed, or we're done here." My blood ran cold. "Sue me? For what?" "Protecting Lillian's legacy." Amelia's eyes darted to me, and she stammered, "Victor's just... he's upset, Dad. He thinks you're being unfair. Unfair. The guy who laughed off Lillian's life's work was calling me unfair." I leaned forward, my voice steady but hard. "What's Victor's plan? Amelia, what's he pushing you to do?" She froze, her fingers twisting her wedding ring, a big gaudy thing Victor probably picked to show off. "He just wants what's ours," she said, but her voice wavered like she wasn't sure anymore. "Yours," I shot back. "You didn't earn that house, those savings. Me and your mom built that for a daughter who cared about family, not some guy's reputation." She flinched, tears welling up, but she didn't back down. "Victor's my family now, Dad. You can't just erase me because I made one mistake." One mistake. I wanted to scream, but I held it together, my heart aching. She was still my girl, but she was so far gone, caught in Victor's web. As she grabbed her purse to leave, I saw that old family photo on the mantel, Amelia, me, and Lillian laughing by the lake. It hit me like a punch. I wasn't just fighting for Lillian's memory. I was fighting for the daughter we raised. But then, everything flipped upside down when I realized Amelia wasn't ready to hear it. She was still defending Victor, still blind to whatever plan he was cooking up. "You'll regret this, Dad," she said, her voice shaky as she stormed out. I stood there alone again, wondering what Victor was scheming. Would Amelia fight me in court? Would she ever see what she'd done? Well, darn it, I wasn't backing down. That will was my stand, and I'd see it through no matter how much it hurt. Well, darn it. After Amelia stormed out of my house waving that lawyer's letter and defending Victor like he was some kind of saint, I thought I'd hit rock bottom. I'm Edward Harlan, 72, still raw, from losing my wife Lillian and cutting our daughter out of the will for choosing Victor's fancy birthday party over her mom's funeral. That fight we had her yelling, I was harsh, me telling her she'd betrayed her mom, left me rattled, sitting in Lillian's old reading chair, staring at our family photo on the mantel. I kept thinking maybe I'd pushed her too far, but then everything flipped upside down when I realized Amelia wasn't the only one caught in Victor's web. I had no idea she was about to stumble onto a truth that'd shake her world to pieces. A week after our blowout, Amelia was in Omaha, sitting in a small coffee shop trying to clear her head. She told me later it was one of those days when the weight of everything, Mom's death, my anger, Victor's pressure, felt like a truck parked on her chest. That's when Clara walked in, her old high school friend, someone she hadn't seen in years. Clara spotted her, hesitated, then slid into the booth across from her. "Amelia, you look like hell," Clara said, blunt as ever. Amelia forced a smile, but Clara wasn't buying it. "What's going on? You dropped off the face of the earth after you married that jerk Victor." Amelia bristled, ready to defend him, but Clara cut her off. "You know he told me to stay away from you, said I wasn't high class enough for your new life. He's been cutting you off from everyone, hasn't he?" Amelia's jaw tightened. Memories of old friends she'd lost touch with flashing back. What I didn't see coming was Clara's next bombshell. Victor's in deep trouble, Amelia. I heard from a mutual friend he's drowning in debt from some shady investment deal that tanked. He's desperate for cash. Amelia's heart sank, a crack forming in the perfect image she'd built of her husband. That night, back at their sleek Omaha apartment, Amelia couldn't shake Clara's words. Victor was out schmoozing clients, so she did something she hadn't done in years. She snooped. She opened his laptop, hands trembling, and scrolled through his emails. There it was, buried in a thread with some woman named Vanessa. Flirty messages, plans to meet, and a line that hit like a gut punch. "Once we secure the Harlan estate, we're set. Babe," Amelia's breath caught. Victor was cheating, and worse, he was banking on my money, Lillian's money, to bail him out. She slammed the laptop shut, tears burning her eyes, and grabbed her mom's journal, the one I'd sent her a copy of after the funeral. She hadn't read it, too scared of the guilt, but now she flipped it open, desperate for something to hold on to. Lillian's words poured out. "Amelia, you were my miracle. My girl, who loved stories and family. Don't let anyone steal that from you." Another line hit harder. "I saw Victor's greed, but I know your heart's stronger." Amelia broke down, sobbing, memories flooding back, helping Mom plant tulips, laughing over bedtime stories. She'd traded that for Victor's world of money and status, and now she saw him for what he was, a liar using her. Sitting on the floor, journal in her lap, Amelia felt her world crumble. She kept thinking about the girl she used to be, the one who'd never pick a party over her mom's funeral. But Victor had twisted her, made her believe family was a burden, that his clients mattered more. What I didn't see coming was how fast her faith in him shattered. She thought of calling me, but shame stopped her. How could she face me after defending him? Clara's words, Lillian's journal, those emails, they were a wake-up call, but she didn't know what to do next. Leave Victor. Confront him. She felt trapped, her loyalty to him warring with the truth, staring her in the face. All she knew was she couldn't keep living his lie. Back in Callaway, I was in Lillian's garden, weeding around her tulips, still wrestling with my own guilt over cutting Amelia out. I hadn't read more of that journal I'd found, but I could feel its pull like Lillian was trying to tell me something. Amelia's anger, Victor's threat to sue it all screamed trouble, and I had a sinking feeling his plan was bigger than I thought. What would Amelia do with the truth she'd found? Would she fight for Victor, or finally see him for the snake he was? Well, darn it, I wasn't sure, but I hoped Lillian was right, that our girl's heart was still there buried somewhere waiting to come home. Well, darn it, just when I thought the worst was behind me, I got a wake-up call that shook me to my core. I'm Edward Harlan, 72, still reeling from cutting my daughter Amelia out of the will after she picked her husband Victor's fancy birthday party over her mom Lillian's funeral. Amelia's tearful outburst at my house last week, defending Victor while he barked threats about suing me, left me gutted but resolute. Her discovery of Victor's cheating and his shady money troubles thanks to her friend Clara and Lillian's journal gave me a sliver of hope she might come around. But then, everything flipped upside down when I stumbled onto something that made my blood run cold. Victor wasn't just a jerk, he was cooking up a plan to tear down everything Lillian and I built. It was a chilly Nebraska morning, and I was at the local diner nursing a cup of black coffee, trying to clear my head. I kept thinking about Amelia, wondering if she'd confront Victor about those emails she found, the ones proving he was stepping out with some woman named Vanessa and banking on our family's money. My thoughts were interrupted when a guy slid into the booth across from me, Tom, a wiry fella who used to work for Victor at his financial firm. "Ed, I owe you an apology," he said, his voice low, eyes as shiftingy, like he was scared someone might overhear. "I quit Victor's outfit because of what he's doing to you." I leaned forward, my coffee forgotten. "What are you talking about, Tom?" He took a deep breath, guilt written all over his face. "Victor's hired some shady lawyer to fake documents, saying you're not in your right mind, dementia, or some nonsense. He's trying to get your will thrown out so he can grab your estate." My heart stopped. Fake documents. What I didn't see coming was how low Victor would stoop, trying to paint me as a crazy old man to steal what Lillian and I worked our whole lives for. Tom spilled more. He'd overheard Victor on a call bragging about how he'd secure the Harlan money once the will was voided. I couldn't live with myself. "Ed," Tom said, his hands shaking, "Lillian was good to this town. I had to tell you." I sat there stunned, my mind racing. Victor wasn't just manipulating Amelia, he was coming for everything, and he didn't care who he hurt. I thanked Tom, promised to keep his name out of it, and drove home. My hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I kept thinking about Lillian's journal still hidden in her tulip garden and how she'd warned me about Victor's greed. She saw it coming, even when I was too blind to notice. Back home, I called my brother Henry and his wife Margaret, who had been rocks for me since Lillian's funeral. I spilled the whole story over the kitchen table, my voice cracking, as I told them about Victor's scheme. Henry, always the practical one, slammed his fist on the table. "That snake's not getting a dime, Ed. We'll fight this." Margaret, calmer, but just as fierce, nodded. "We need proof, Ed. Something to nail him." I thought of Mrs. Whitaker, our neighbor, who'd brought casseroles and stories about Lillian's kindness. She was sharp, knew everyone in town, and had a knack for digging up dirt. I called her over, and she didn't hesitate. "Lillian would have fought tooth and nail for you. she said, eyes blazing. Let's get to work. We spent the next few days digging. Tom slipped me a USB drive with copies of emails from Victor to his lawyer outlining the fake dementia claim. Mrs. Whitaker, bless her, got a friend at the county clerk's office to pull records showing Victor's shady lawyer had a history of forging documents. Henry tracked down a former client of Victor's who'd heard him boast about taking care of the old man's money. Every piece we found fueled my fire, but it also tore me up. I kept thinking about Amelia. Did she know about this? Was she in on it? Or was she just another pawn in Victor's game? The thought of her siding with him made my stomach churn, but Lillian's words in that journal, her heart still there, kept me going. Standing in Lillian's garden that night, pulling weeds under the moonlight, I felt her strength in me. I wasn't just fighting for our money, I was fighting for her legacy, for the kids she taught to read, for the life we built. But could I stop Victor before he dragged this to court? What I didn't see coming was how close we were to a showdown, and whether Amelia would stand with me or against me when the truth came out. Well, darn it, I wasn't backing down. With Henry, Margaret, and Mrs. Whitaker by my side, I was ready to take Victor on no matter what it took. Well, darn it, I thought I'd seen the worst of Victor's schemes, but I was still on edge wondering if I could stop him before he dragged us to court. I'm Edward Harlan, 72, holding tight to my late wife Lillian's memory while fighting to protect our legacy from my daughter Amelia's husband, Victor Langston. After Tom, Victor's old employee, spilled the beans about his plan to fake documents, claiming I'd lost my marbles, I was all in, working with my brother Henry and neighbor Mrs. Whitaker to gather evidence, emails, records, anything to nail that snake. Amelia's world was crumbling too after she found those emails proving Victor was cheating and banking on our money to fix his debts. I kept thinking about her, wondering if she'd ever see through him. What I didn't see coming was how fast she'd take a stand and how it'd start bringing her back to the girl Lillian always believed in. Amelia told me later what happened that week in Omaha. She was a wreck, pacing their fancy apartment, her mom's journal open on the coffee table. Those damning emails burned into her mind. Victor came home late, reeking of cologne and smug as ever. "You find anything useful to fix this will mess?" he snapped, not even looking at her. She took a deep breath, her hands shaking, and laid it all out. "I saw your emails, Victor. You're cheating with Vanessa, and you're using me to get my parents' money." His face went hard. No denial, just a cold smirk. "Grow up, Amelia. This is how the world works. Your dad's being a stubborn old fool, and we need that estate to stay on top." Her heart sank, but something snapped inside her. "No," she said, voice steady for the first time in years. "I'm done being your pawn." Victor laughed like she was joking, but she wasn't. "I want a divorce," she said and walked out, leaving her gaudy wedding ring on the counter. Just like that, she was done with his lies. By the weekend, Amelia had moved into a small rundown apartment in a quieter part of Omaha. No more fancy dinners or country club memberships, just a single room with a creaky bed and a view of a parking lot. She took a job at a local library shelving books, helping kids pick out stories, the kind of work Victor always mocked as beneath her. One afternoon, while sorting through donations, she found an old copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, the same book Lillian used to read to her at bedtime. She opened it, and there in her mom's neat handwriting was a note, "To my Amelia, always fight for what's right, like Atticus. Love, Mom." Amelia sank to the floor, tears streaming down her face, memories flooding back, sitting on the porch, Lillian's voice soft as she read her hand, brushing Amelia's hair. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she whispered. "I lost myself." It hit her like a freight train. She'd traded her mom's love her family's values for Victor's empty promises. But then everything flipped upside down. She wasn't that person anymore. She vowed to make it right, to live the way Lillian would have wanted. A few days later, Amelia drove to Callaway, her heart pounding as she pulled up to the cemetery where Lillian was buried. She knelt by the headstone tulips from our garden in her hands and let it all out. "Mom, I wasn't there when you needed me," she said, voice breaking. "I chose Victor, and I was wrong. I'm going to make you proud, I swear." She stayed there for hours talking to Lillian, promising to carry on her work, reading to kids, helping others, being the daughter she'd raised. It was the first time in years she felt like herself, not Victor's trophy wife. But the guilt was heavy, and she didn't know if I'd ever forgive her. Would she show up at the trial to stand with me, or was she still too ashamed to face me? Back in Callaway, I was in Lillian's garden, tending her tulips, still clutching to her memory. I hadn't heard from Amelia since our fight, and Victor's threat to sue was looming like a dark cloud. Henry and Mrs. Whitaker were digging up more dirt on that shady lawyer of his, but I couldn't shake the worry. Would Amelia side with Victor in court, or had she finally seen him for what he was? Lillian's journal, still tucked under that garden stone, kept calling to me, but I wasn't ready to read more, not yet. Well, darn it, I had to keep fighting for Lillian, for our legacy. What I didn't see coming was whether Amelia would stand by my side when the gavel came down, or if she'd still be caught in Victor's shadow. Well, darn it! I thought I was ready for anything after digging up dirt on Victor's slimy scheme, but walking into that courtroom felt like stepping into a lion's den. I'm Edward Harlan, Center 2, still holding tight to my late wife Lillian's memory, as I fought to protect our legacy from Victor Langston, my daughter Amelia's soon-to-be ex-husband. After Amelia walked out on him, hit hard by his cheating and his plot to grab our family's money. I was on edge, clutching a USB drive full of evidence emails, recordings that me, my brother Henry, and Mrs. Whitaker had scraped together to stop Victor's plan to fake my dementia. Amelia's vow at Lillian's grave, promising to live up to her mom's values, gave me hope, but I wasn't sure if she'd show up today to face Victor. I kept thinking she might still be too ashamed to stand with me. What I didn't see coming was how this day would turn everything upside down, showing me who my daughter really was. The courtroom in Callaway was packed, folks from town, whispering as I sat with Walter. Our lawyer, my hands sweaty on the wooden bench. Victor strutted in, slick as ever, in his tailored suit, his shady lawyer by his side, smirking like they'd already won. They laid out their case bold as brass, a stack of forged documents, claiming I'd lost my marbles, that I wasn't in my right mind when I rewrote the will to cut Amelia out and give everything to Lillian's reading fund and the Cancer Foundation. Victor's lawyer waved a doctor's note fake, of course, saying I'd been confused for months. I could feel the room's eyes on me, some neighbors wondering if it was true. My heart pounded, but I kept my face stone cold, thinking of Lillian's tulip garden, her journal, her belief in doing what's right. Walter leaned over, whispering, "We've got this." Ed and I nodded, gripping that USB drive like a lifeline. When it was our turn, Walter played our ace, a recording from Tom Victor's old employee who'd overheard him bragging about the dementia scam. Victor's voice crackled through the courtroom speakers. "The old man's will is ours once we prove he's nuts." "Easy money." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victor's smirk faded his eyes, darting to his lawyer, who started fumbling papers. Walter followed up with emails from Victor to his lawyer laying out the whole dirty plan. I watched the judge's face harden, and for the first time I felt a spark of relief. But then, everything flipped upside down when the courtroom door swung open, and there was Amelia standing tall, her face pale, but her eyes fierce. What I didn't see coming was her stepping up to the stand, ready to blow Victor's world apart. Amelia's voice trembled at first, but it grew stronger as she spoke. "Your Honor, I'm Amelia Edwards' daughter. I was wrong to miss my mom's funeral for my husband's birthday party. Victor pushed me to do it, said it was for his career. But that's not all." She took a deep breath, her hands clenched. "He's been cheating on me with a woman named Vanessa, planning to use my parents' money to pay off his debts from a failed investment. He manipulated me, cut me off from my friends, my family, even my mom when she was dying." The room went dead silent. I saw tears in her eyes, but she kept going. "I'm here to make it right for my mom, for my dad." She looked at me, and I felt my throat tighten, a mix of pride and pain washing over me. Victor jumped up, his face red. "She's lying," he shouted. "She's just bitter because I'm leaving her." His lawyer tried to hush him, but Victor kept digging his hole. "I built our life. I deserve that money." The judge banged her gavel, shutting him up, and turned to Amelia. "Do you have proof?" "Ms. Harlan?" Amelia nodded, handing over printed emails, the same ones she'd found, proving Victor's affair and his scheme. The judge's eyes narrowed as she read. Then she slammed the gavel again. "Mr. Langston's claim is dismissed. The will stands." The room erupted in murmurs, and Victor slumped in his seat, his face a mask of rage and defeat, his whole plan crumbling like a house of cards. I sat there, my heart lighter, but still heavy. I was relieved Lillian's legacy was safe. Victor got what he deserved, but seeing Amelia up there laying bare her mistakes tore me up. She'd lost so much, and I couldn't help but feel I'd pushed her to this point by cutting her out. As we left the courtroom, folks patted my back, saying justice was done. But my eyes were on Amelia, standing alone by the door, looking small and broken. Would Victor try something else to get back at us? What I didn't see coming was what he'd do now that his scheme had crashed and burned. Well, darn it, I felt like we'd won a battle, but the war wasn't over. I looked at Amelia, wondering if she'd stay with me now, or if the shame would keep us apart. Well, darn it, after that courtroom showdown, where Victor's whole dirty scheme fell apart like a cheap deck of cards. I thought I'd feel victorious, but I was just plain worn out. I'm Edward Harlan, 72, still picking up the pieces from losing my wife Lillian, and watching my daughter Amelia turn against her husband, Victor Langston, on the stand exposing his cheating and his plot to steal our family's money. The judge's gavel had rung out, dismissing Victor's claim and upholding the will I'd changed to cut Amelia out. But seeing her up there, tears in her eyes, as she laid it all bare, left me with a mix of relief and ache. I kept thinking about her vow at Lillian's grave, promising to make things right, but I wasn't sure if we could bridge the gap between us. What I didn't see coming was how quickly the healing would start pulling us back together, in ways that felt like Lillian was guiding us from above. A couple weeks after the trial, I headed back to Walter's office, my mind made up. Victor had slunk off, defeated. But Amelia's courage that day had shifted something in me. "Split it down the middle," I told Walter, my voice steady. "Half to Amelia, half to Lillian's reading fund and the Cancer Foundation." He nodded, no surprise on his face this time. "You sure, Ed? She's earned it back?" I sighed, thinking of her standing up to Victor. "She's trying, Walter." "That's enough for now." I swore him to secrecy, no telling Amelia yet. Why hold back? Part of me wanted to see if she'd stick around without the money dangling like a carrot. Would she rebuild our bond for real, or was it all guilt? That question nagged at me like a splinter, but I pushed it aside, focusing on the hope flickering in my chest. Not long after, I got a call from Amelia, her voice soft, hesitant, like she was testing the waters. "Dad, I'm organizing a reading event for kids at the library. It's for Mom's fund. Would you come? I paused, my heart swelling a bit. I'll be there, kiddo, I said. The event was at the old school library where Lillian used to work, and walking in, seeing Amelia at the front with a stack of books hit me hard. She looked different, simpler in jeans and a sweater, no more of Victor's flashy style. A dozen kids sat cross-legged, eyes wide, as she read from Where the Wild Things Are. Her voice warm, just like Lillian's at bedtime. And Max said, "Let the wild rumpus start," she read, and the kids laughed. I sat in the back, tears pricking my eyes, watching her light up the room. She was connecting with those kids, passing on Lillian's love for stories, and it felt like a piece of my wife was alive again. Afterward, she hugged me, whispering, "I'm trying, Dad, for Mom." I nodded, my throat tight, seeing the change in her, not just words, but actions. Mrs. Whitaker, bless her, saw how we were inching closer and set up a memorial for Lillian at St. Paul's Church, a simple gathering with neighbors, coffee, and stories. "Lillian would want this," she said, pulling me and Amelia together. Folks shared memories how Lillian helped with book drives, read to sick kids, made everyone feel like family. Amelia listened, tears rolling down her face, then stood up. "Mom taught me to love stories, but I forgot that for a while," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry I wasn't there for her, or for you, Dad." I reached for her hand, squeezing it, feeling the wall between us crack. We talked late into the night, her telling me about ditching Victor, starting over at the library, finding joy in the little things again. "I was so lost, Dad," she said. "Victor made me think money was everything." I saw her pain, her fight to reclaim herself, and it stirred something in me, hope, real hope that we could rebuild. But I hadn't read Lillian's journal yet, still hidden in her tulip garden, and I kept the new will a secret. Why not tell her I wanted to know if this was real, if she'd stay without the inheritance pulling her back? Would spilling it now change things, or was our bond strong enough? That question hung over me like a cloud, but watching Amelia blossom, tending her own little garden in her apartment, gave me strength. Well, darn it, I was finding hope again through her change, like Lillian was smiling down, whispering it'd all work out. Well, darn it, after all the tears and triumphs, I started to feel like maybe, just maybe, life was giving us a second chance. I'm Edward Harlan, too, still carrying the weight of losing my wife Lillian, but lifted by the way my daughter Amelia was coming back to me. After she stood up to her ex-husband Victor in court, exposing his lies and cheating, we'd started rebuilding her reading to kids at the library, U.S. sharing quiet moments at Lillian's memorial, organized by Mrs. Whitaker. I'd changed the will to split our estate between Amelia and Lillian's charities, but I hadn't told her, wanting to see if her change was real, not just guilt or greed. I kept thinking we were on the right path, but what I didn't see coming was how fast things would turn around, bringing a kind of joy I hadn't felt since Lillian was alive. One crisp fall afternoon, Amelia showed up at my house in Callaway, her cheeks flushed, a nervous smile on her face. "Dad, I want you to meet someone," she said, stepping aside to reveal a guy about her age, lanky with kind eyes and a flannel shirt, nothing like Victor's slick suits. "This is James," she said. "He's a middle school teacher, volunteers at the library." James shook my hand, his grip firm but warm. "Heard a lot about you, Mr. Harlan," he said, "and about Lillian. Sounds like she was an incredible woman." I nodded, my throat tight, liking him already. Over coffee in the kitchen, Amelia told me they'd met at the library during one of her reading sessions, bonding over dog-eared copies of kids' books. James knew everything: her missing Lillian's funeral, Victor's betrayal, the will. "He gets it, Dad," she said, her eyes soft. He thinks you did the right thing." I looked at James, who just nodded, no judgment in his face, and I felt a warmth I hadn't known in years. That night, I took Amelia aside, sitting on the porch where Lillian used to read to her. "I need to tell you something," I said, my voice low. "I changed the will again. Half to you, half to your mom's charities." Her eyes widened, then filled with tears. "Dad, I don't deserve it," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I wasn't there for Mom, for you. I'm so sorry." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing, and I pulled her close like when she was a kid. "You're trying, kiddo," I said. "That's what matters. Your mom would be proud." She looked up, tears streaming, and hugged me tight. "I'm trying to be her daughter again," she said. I felt a peace settle over me, like Lillian was right there smiling. What I didn't see coming was how forgiving her would heal me too, like a weight I'd carried since her funeral finally lifted. A few months later, they got married at St. Paul's Church, the same place we buried Lillian. It was nothing like Amelia's first wedding, with Victor no overpriced flowers or flashy photographers. Just a simple ceremony, a $100 dress from a thrift shop, and tulips from our garden tucked into her bouquet. James stood by her, beaming, as Pastor Thomas spoke about love and second chances. At the reception, a small backyard gathering with neighbors and homemade cake. Amelia pulled me aside during our father-daughter dance. "Dad, I'm pregnant," she whispered, her eyes shining. "We're having a baby." My heart skipped, and I laughed a real laugh for the first time in years. "That's the best news, kiddo," I said, hugging her. But then, everything flipped upside down with curiosity. What would they name this child? Would it carry a piece of Lillian's memory? As we danced, I looked around at Mrs. Whitaker, Henry, Margaret, all the folks who'd stood by us. Amelia was glowing not with Victor's fake glamour, but with a quiet joy that reminded me of Lillian. I realized forgiving her wasn't just letting go, it was strength, the kind Lillian always had. Victor was a distant memory, his schemes dust in the wind, and here we were, a family again. I kept thinking about that baby, wondering what they'd call it, and hoping it'd grow up with Lillian's heart. Well, darn it, for the first time I felt like we were whole again, like Lillian was watching, proud of us both. Well, darn it, after all the heartbreak and battles, I finally felt like the clouds were parting. I'm Edward Harlan, Chapter 2. 72, sitting on my porch in Callaway, Nebraska, looking out at Lillian's tulip garden where new blooms are starting to peek through the dirt. Just a year ago, I was a wreck, Lillian gone to cancer, my daughter Amelia choosing her ex-husband, Victor's glitzy birthday party over her mom's funeral, and me fighting to keep our legacy safe from his greedy claws. But Amelia's courage at the trial, her new life with James, and that little spark of hope we found together at her wedding changed everything. I'd rewritten the will to give her half, keeping the rest for Lillian's charities, and seeing her blossom at the library, living out her mom's love for kids and books, made me believe we were family again. I kept thinking we'd come full circle. But what I didn't see coming was how a new life would seal that bond forever. It was a warm September day when Amelia called, her voice bubbling over the phone. "Dad, he's here. Our baby boy," she said, and I could hear James in the background laughing with joy. I drove to Omaha, my old pickup rattling, and when I walked into their little house near the school where James teaches, there was Amelia, glowing, cradling a tiny bundle. "Meet Liam," she said, tears in her eyes after Mom Lillian. "But, you know, a boy's version." My heart stopped, then swelled so big I thought it'd burst. Liam, with his mom's blonde curls and a sleepy smile, was a piece of Lillian, right there in my arms. "You did good, kiddo," I said, my voice cracking as I hugged her. Later, back in Callaway, We planted new tulips in Lillian's garden, me, Amelia, and James, with little Liam in a stroller nearby. As we dug the dirt, Amelia looked at me, her eyes soft. This is what Mom would have wanted, right us together, keeping her garden alive. I nodded, feeling Lillian's presence in every petal, every breeze. Word got around town about Victor, that snake who'd tried to steal our legacy with his fake dementia claim. Mrs. Whitaker, always one for gossip, told me he'd remarried some rich gal from Denver. But it wasn't the fairy tale he'd hoped. "He's miserable, Ed," she said, sipping coffee in my kitchen. "She's got him on a tight leash, and he's still drowning in debt." I couldn't help but smile a bit, not out of spite, but because it felt right. Victor's greed had burned him just like Lillian always said it would. "Money shows who you are," she'd told me once, and boy was she right. Victor's cold, calculating heart got him exactly what he deserved. A life chasing cash, empty as ever. I kept thinking about how he'd tried to tear us apart, but now, seeing Amelia and Liam, I knew he'd lost for good. That evening, I sat on the porch, the same one where Lillian used to read to Amelia, and pulled out her journal, the one I'd found in the garden. I'd avoided it for so long, scared of the pain, but now I read her words, "Family needs to be reborn, Ed. Forgive and let it grow." Those lines hit me like a warm wave, and I realized forgiving Amelia wasn't just for her, it was for me, for Lillian, for the life we'd built. I looked out at the garden tulips glowing in the sunset and felt her smile like she was right there beside me. What I didn't see coming was how much peace I'd find knowing her legacy lived on, not just in the charities, but in Amelia, in Liam, in us. Well, darn it, as I sit here now, the world feels right again. Amelia's back, not the girl lost to Victor's lies, but the daughter Lillian raised full of heart. Liam's giggles, the new tulips, the way Amelia reads to kids at the library. It's all proof that family isn't just blood. It's the choices we make every day. Victor paid his price, and we've got our future. But then everything flipped upside down one last time. In the best way, I felt Lillian not as a ghost, but as love, growing in every bloom, every laugh, every moment we share. That's her legacy, and it's ours to keep. Well, darn it! After all the heartbreak and battles, I finally felt like the clouds were parting. I'm Edward Harlan, sitting on my porch in Callaway, Nebraska, looking out at Lillian's tulip garden where new blooms are starting to peek through the dirt. Just a year ago, I was a wreck, Lillian gone to cancer. My daughter Amelia choosing her ex-husband Victor's glitzy birthday party over her mom's funeral, and me fighting to keep our legacy safe from his greedy claws. But Amelia's courage at the trial, her new life with James, and that little spark of hope we found together at her wedding changed everything. I'd rewritten the will to give her half, keeping the rest for Lillian's charities, and seeing her blossom at the library, living out her mom's love for kids and books, made me believe we were family again. I kept thinking we'd come full circle. But what I didn't see coming was how a new life would seal that bond forever. It was a warm September day when Amelia called, her voice bubbling over the phone. "Dad, he's here. Our baby boy," she said, and I could hear James in the background laughing with joy. I drove to Omaha, my old pickup rattling, and when I walked into their little house near the school where James teaches, there was Amelia glowing, cradling a tiny bundle. "Meet Liam," she said, tears in her eyes after Mom Lillian, but you know a boy's version. My heart stopped, then swelled so big I thought it'd burst. Liam, with his mom's blonde curls and a sleepy smile, was a piece of Lillian right there in my arms. "You did good, kiddo," I said, my voice cracking as I hugged her. Later back in Callaway, we planted new tulips in Lillian's garden, me, Amelia, and James with little Liam in a stroller nearby. As we dug the dirt, Amelia looked at me, her eyes soft. This is what Mom would have wanted, right, us together, keeping her garden alive. I nodded, feeling Lillian's presence in every petal, every breeze. Word got around town about Victor, that snake who'd tried to steal our legacy with his fake dementia claim. Mrs. Whitaker, always one for gossip, told me he'd remarried some rich gal from Denver, but it wasn't the fairy tale he'd hoped. "He's miserable, Ed," she said, sipping coffee in my kitchen. "She's got him on a tight leash, and he's still drowning in debt." I couldn't help but smile a bit, not out of spite, but because it felt right. Victor's greed had burned him, just like Lillian always said it would. "Money shows who you are," she'd told me once, and boy was she right. Victor's cold, calculating heart got him exactly what he deserved, a life chasing cash, empty as ever. I kept thinking about how he'd tried to tear us apart, but now, seeing Amelia and Liam, I knew he'd lost for good. That evening, I sat on the porch, the same one where Lillian used to read to Amelia, and pulled out her journal, the one I'd found in the garden. I'd avoided it for so long, scared of the pain, but now I read her words. Family needs to be reborn. Ed, forgive and let it grow. Those lines hit me like a warm wave, and I realized forgiving Amelia wasn't just for her. It was for me, for Lillian, for the life we'd built. I looked out at the garden tulips glowing in the sunset and felt her smile like she was right there beside me. What I didn't see coming was how much peace I'd find knowing her legacy lived on, not just in the charities, but in Amelia, in Liam, in us. Well, darn it, as I sit here now, the world feels right again. Amelia's back, not the girl lost to Victor's lies, but the daughter Lillian raised full of heart. Liam's giggles, the new tulips, the way Amelia reads to kids at the library. It's all proof that family isn't just blood. It's the choices we make every day. Victor paid his price, and we've got our future. But then, everything flipped upside down one last time. In the best way, I felt Lillian, not as a ghost, but as love, growing in every bloom, every laugh, every moment we share. That's her legacy, and it's ours to keep. Well, darn it, sitting here on my porch in Callaway, Nebraska, watching the sunset paint Lillian's tulip garden gold. I've learned a thing or two about what really matters. I'm Edward Harlan, 72, and this wild ride, losing my wife Lillian, fighting my daughter Amelia's ex-husband, Victor's greedy schemes, and finding our way back to each other, taught me that family isn't just blood. It's the choices we make every day. Amelia's journey from losing herself to Victor's lies to naming her son Liam after her mom showed me money doesn't make you, it shows who you are. Victor's miserable end, chasing cash and coming up empty, proved that. Lillian always said, forgiveness is strength, not weakness, and letting Amelia back in healed us both. Her legacy, those kids she taught to love, books, the tulips we plant together, lives on in Liam's giggles and Amelia's new life. I kept thinking we'd lost it all, but what I didn't see coming was how love, the real kind, outlasts even death. If this story of betrayal, redemption, and second chances hit you in the heart like it did me, give it a like, share it with someone you love, and hit that subscribe button to join me for more stories about the ties that bind us. Let's keep Lillian's legacy growing together.